I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. We continue in the first epistle to the Corinthians. Paul is writing this while staying in Ephesus. He's been getting word back about the state of the church in Corinth and other areas of Greece, and he is responding to controversies and questions that have arisen. He has already talked about the divisions that are among the people, telling them this is not good. He has also been expounding on the difference between the philosophies of men and the instruction of God and the Spirit. That's what we've been reading, and we're going to pick it up now in chapter 3. In this video, we have a Joseph Smith translation. Now, what the Joseph Smith translation is, this is a translation or correction done by Joseph Smith to restore those passages that have been lost or corrupted over the years. 1 Corinthians chapter 3. And I, brethren, could not speak unto you as unto spiritual, but as unto carnal, even as unto babes in Christ. I had fed you with milk, and not with meat, for hitherto ye were not able to bear it, neither yet now are ye able, for ye are yet carnal. For whereas there is among you envying, and strife, and divisions, are ye not carnal, and walk as men? For while one saith, I am of Paul, and another, I am of Apollos, are ye not carnal? Who then is Paul, and who is Apollos, but ministers by whom ye believed, even as the Lord gave to every man? I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So then, neither is he that planteth anything, neither is he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one, and every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are laborers together with God. Ye are God's husbandry, ye are God's building. According to the grace of God which is given unto me, as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another buildeth thereon. But let every man take heed how he buildeth thereon. For other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Jesus Christ. And if any man build upon this foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest. For the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy, for the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seemeth to be wise in this world, let him become a fool, that he may be wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God, for it is written, He taketh the wise in their own craftiness. And again, the Lord knoweth the thoughts of the wise, that they are vain. Therefore let no man glory in men, for all things are yours. Whether Paul, or Apollos, or Cephas, or the world, or life, or death, or things present, or things to come, all are yours. And ye are Christ's, and Christ is God's. Remember that the Corinthians are Greeks, and the Greeks are great philosophers, famous philosophers. Now in Athens, that was kind of the center of philosophy. Everyone would gather to Athens to philosophize about everything. But the Corinthians were still philosophers, and to a lot of them, they were trying to explain the gospel through philosophy. And that is why Paul's talking so much about comparing philosophies of men to the learning of God. Because that's what the Corinthians are doing. They are going back to their old ways of philosophizing everything, instead of just believing in the simple truth of Christ. And we have here this very, very nice passage of milk and meat. I fed you the milk because at the time you were just new in the church, you were as babes in the church, and you were not able to handle the meat. And you still can't because you're still in your old ways of philosophizing everything. That is also why we have this division of Paul and Apollos and all this. It's not that they're saying, I'm better because I am of Paul, I'm better because it's just like when you came to Athens and you had the Epicureans and you had the Stoics. And they would come together and they would talk about everything, and the Epicureans would hold up their doctrine, and the Stoics would hold their doctrine, and it would just be the big debate. And that's what we're getting in Corinth. One would hold up the words of Paul and say, this is the way it's supposed to be, and we philosophize about Paul a little bit, but somebody else will hold up the words of Apollos and say, no, this is the philosophy. And that's what we're getting is, it's like the division of the Stoics and the Epicureans, but it's the division of the words of Paul and the words of Apollos. And they are holding them as two separate traditions, two separate schools of philosophical thought. They're not understanding that both of them are teaching the same gospel. They may be teaching it in different ways. They may be emphasizing different parts of it, but they are still teaching the same gospel. It would be like today, somebody saying, oh, I think that David A. Bednar, I like his philosophy of the gospel better. I'm going to follow his philosophy. And somebody else saying, no, I'm going to follow the philosophy of, say, Garrett W. Gong. We're going to follow his philosophy. And not understanding that they're teaching the same gospel. Christ is the head. Christ is the gospel. We don't follow Elder Bednar. We don't follow Elder Gong. We follow Christ. And unless we are unified in that following of Christ, all we have is man's philosophy, and it gets us nowhere. It's not, and again, it's not that the Corinthians were denying Christ. They weren't saying, oh, David Bednar, or they're not saying Paul is the Savior. If we follow Paul, we're going to... It's that they were saying, I like this way of presenting the gospel better. I'm going to follow David Bednar. He has a better gospel. Maybe a better analogy here would be to look at the rest of Christianity. How many times have you had Christian friends say, oh, well, I didn't like the church I was in, so I went and we're going to look around for a church that better fits our philosophy, the way we look at things. So you have the Baptist philosophy and the Methodist philosophy. And they all have they all claim to be Christian. They all claim to be followers of Christ. But they each teach their own version of the gospel. They each teach their own philosophy, rather than being unified in the faith. That's what Paul is talking about. That's what Paul is getting at here. And he's saying, don't do this. We need to be unified. Either we are all one gospel, one group of saints, or we are divided and we are not of God. There is a couple of Joseph Smith translations here. In verse 2, instead of you were not able to bear it, it is corrected you were not able to receive it. So he's telling them, we're not giving you the deeper doctrines. We are giving you the very basics, because if we tried to teach you anything more than just the basics, then it would cause a lot of problems. And I've seen that too. People get more depth in the gospel and they're not ready for it, and it causes issues. And that a lot of the problems we see in the modern day of people turning away from the church is because they're looking into things that they are not prepared to look at. And it causes problems. It always has. But we also have this in verse 15. So, if any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved. Yet so as by fire. But we have the correction, but he himself may be saved. Now, what is man's work in this instance? I think this is talking about our work in the gospel, our setting up churches, our service, among others. So, when Christ comes and the world is destroyed by fire, all the works of darkness are burnt, purged off. So if a man has established a church, even a church to Christ, and it is destroyed in the fire because it is not really of Christ, well, the work is destroyed, but the man himself could still be saved. He still has that chance. Not guaranteed, but he might be. Those, however, as I said, when the fire comes through, there are those whose works are good, and they are not burnt, they are not destroyed, but are purified and strengthened by the fire. Those are the ones whose work is to God. I'm going to leave that here, and I will see you in chapter 4.